Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the second video in the real analysis video series. And in the previous video, we spoke about some basic set theory and ordered sets and upper bounds and so on. And in today's video, we'll be starting with something called basic topology. But before we get into that, I just want to pick up where we left off last week. So last week I left you guys with a question, and the question was, does Q have the least upper bound property? So I'm gonna give you an example and we'll discuss about it through this example. So let's consider A to be the set of all rational numbers P such that P square is less than 2. So some of the elements in this set would be 1 half, so on. And let B be all the set of rational numbers such that they are greater than, the square of those rational numbers are greater than 2. So an example for this would be 2 itself, because 2 square is 4, and so on and so forth. So what we're going to talk about here is whether A has an upper bound or not, and if so, what are the upper bounds of A. So now I'm going to exclusively talk about A. So I'm going to pick A here. So A actually does have an upper bound, right? What are some of the examples of upper bounds for A? 2 is an upper bound for A itself, right? And so on and so forth. In fact, if you think about it, all the upper bounds of A are in fact nothing but the set B. If you look at it closely, you will understand what I'm trying to say. So the upper bounds of the set A will be all those rational numbers whose squares are actually greater than 2, which is nothing but the set B. So let's remove that. So the upper bounds of A are in fact the set B. Now, if we talk about the least upper bound, so we know that now A is a non-empty subset of Q. A is a subset of Q. A is not empty, is not the empty set. We can actually remove this part here. Yeah, so A is not the empty set. So A is not empty, it has some elements, it's not the null set. And now we have to, and we also know that A is bounded. Why do we know A is bounded? Because we just discussed that all the upper bounds of A are in fact the set B. So we know that A has some upper bounds and therefore it is bounded above. Now the question comes, and I'm leading to what the least upper bound property is. If you guys haven't seen my previous video, it's important to understand this. So I'll leave a link right here in case you haven't seen it. If you have, you'll obviously be following what I'm talking about. So now the least upper bound property says that if A is a subset of Q, A is not empty, and A is bounded above, then the supremum, if the supremum of A exists in Q, if this is true, then Q has the least upper bound property. Now I want you to understand that in real analysis, and this is a very important thing to understand, when we talk about proving something, you always have to prove with the most general sense. You can't take a specific example and prove a theorem or prove a particular concept. You can't do that, right? You have to prove it in the most general sense. But when it comes to disproving a theorem or disproving a statement, you can always give a counter example. And that is exactly what we are trying to do here. So A is an example of a subset of Q. A does not represent all possible subsets of Q. It's a very specific example. And we are in fact using this example, this specific example of this set A, which I've defined here, to disprove the least upper bound property. Now I'm just going to hide myself here so that you can read what I've written. So what is the supremum of A in this case? Whatever the supremum of A is, we know for a fact that it in fact does not lie in the set Q. Why is that? Because we know that, let's say, for what is, so we're talking about all the rationals. So I'm here now, what I'm talking about is p square less than 2 where p belongs to q, correct? So as we go closer and closer, so that means p is less than root 2. So I'm taking, without loss of generality, I'm just taking the positive root. So I'm saying that I need all those rationals such which are less than root 2. So we know root 2 is actually an irrational number. And we also know that between every two rational numbers, there's an irrational number, and this keeps going on and on, right? So that means as I'm going closer and closer to root 2, p is getting, there are more and more rational numbers that are close to root 2, but there can never be a rational number that's exactly root 2 because root 2 is irrational. So the supremum of a in this example does not belong to q. So this particular part of the least upper bound property gets violated. And this is a counter example, both A and B. You can check for B as well. B will be an example of why Q does not follow the greatest lower bound property. And A is a counter example of why Q does not have the least upper bound property. So through this counter example, we have actually disproven that statement or the fact. We have given an example of where Q does not follow the least upper bound property. So this is a counter example, and therefore we can clearly say that, yeah, Q does not have the least upper bound property through this counter example. So I hope this example is clear. If it's not, make sure you leave a comment and I'll provide some more analysis on it. So now quickly moving on to today's topic, which is basic topology. So for those of you who have dealt with relations before and know what relations are, there is a particular term called equivalence relation. So I'm not going to explain this in detail because I expect most of you guys to know it. If you guys don't know it, it's something you can read up in a couple of minutes. So maybe I'll leave a link in the description to somewhere you can read up about it. So for a relation to actually be called an equivalence relation, it has to follow three particular properties, right? And those three properties are as follows. So one, it has to be reflective. Second is it has to be symmetric. That means if A is related to B, then B has to be related to A, and it should be transitive. That if A maps, we can either say maps or related, doesn't matter exactly right now. We can say that if A maps B, B maps C, then A maps C as well. Or there's a relation between A and C as well. Now, another thing is the mapping has to be a one-to-one map and it has to be an onto map. So apart from these three properties, we're basically saying that there is a 1-1 onto map which has these three properties. Then if it has these three properties, then we can say that that particular map or that particular relation is an equivalence relation. Now this map is defined between two sets, or this relation is defined between two sets called A and B. Those are just any two possible sets. And now this will form the basis of the most important things we're going to learn in this lecture. This is not exactly related to real analysis, but you need to understand what an equivalence relation is to understand what we're going to discuss next. And an equivalence relation is denoted by the tilde. Cool. So like I said, I'm not going to explain this because it's not worth spending as much time on in the video. I'll leave a link below and you guys can check it out if you're not already aware of it. So I'm going to be talking about finite, infinite, countable and uncountable sets in this video, and that's extremely important in real analysis to understand. A lot of things are dependent on this. So if I have a set A that has elements 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. These are the only elements of set A. Now, if I ask you, is it finite? Most of you are going to say yes, and you are correct. But we need to understand why A is a finite set. So A is a finite set because we can give a specific number of elements in the set. Correct? So I can say here that there are exactly 5 elements in the set. So that means the number of elements are quantifiable. It ends at a particular point. It starts at a particular point, it ends at a particular point. Therefore, it is finite. Now, I'm just giving you the brief understanding or ideas you need to have in your mind to understand these terms. I'll deal with the formal definitions in the next slide. Now, let's say we have a set B, which is nothing but the set of all natural numbers, which is nothing but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Now, if I ask you whether this set is infinite or is it finite or what's the scene here, most of you are going to say, yes, it's an infinite set. And you guys are correct again. And why is that? Because there is no end, there is no definite end point to this set. If I tell you to tell me the last element in the set B, you will fail because you don't know the last quantifiable natural number. There is no such quantifiable natural number, right? There are infinite elements in the set. Whereas in set A, if I told you, tell me the last element present in set A, you would have told me, yes, the last element present in set A is 5. So I hope you understand the subtle difference between the two. So yes, this is in fact an infinite set. Now comes the question of what is a countable set. Cool. So this is something that's slightly tricky and needs to be understood. A lot of different books and a lot of different literature gives subtle variations to the definition of what countable is. But I'm going to be following what Rudin says in his book, and it's one of the best books for real analysis. So to give you to give you a sense and help you understand what countable is, I'm going to put it this way. If I asked you to count and tell me the 7th element in the set B, you would be able to do that, right? You would be able to tell me that the 7th element is in fact 7. If I asked you to tell me the 1155th element, you would have told me that 1155 is that element itself. So you are able to count the elements. There is a particular order to it. And if I pinpoint and ask you in a quantified manner that yes, tell me where the nth element is, you will be able to tell me where that nth element is in this set B. And that is in fact what countable means. And I'll give you a formal definition in the next slide, and it will make a lot more sense with the help of this example as well, both of them together. But for now, just think of it as, yes, I'm able to count the elements. I'm able to specifically tell you which element it is if I ask you. If I give you a number, an index in the set and tell you, okay, tell me which element this index points to, you will be able to do that. So if I tell you M is some value, let's say 1122, and I tell you, where does 1122nd element lie in set B? You will be able to tell me that. So this is not only a finite set, it is also countable. Now, this is not only an infinite set, it's also countable. Now, set A is a finite set. In terms of set A, we don't need to talk about countability per se, right? Because it is finite, we know it ends, so we're not bothered per se about it being countable or uncountable. It's obviously a subset, you could say, of some sense of countable. Like we know the order, we know it ends, and it's finite. But the set A is not, in the sense of Rudin's definition, set A is not called countable. We won't term A as countable, we only term A as finite. B is an infinite set, yes, it's true. B is also a countable set. And here comes the intricacy of the definition of countable, that by the definition we are following, by definition, every countable set is in fact infinite. Cool. Now we're going to talk about what an uncountable set is. And I'm going to give you the most common example that we are all taught of. Let's say set C is the set of all real numbers. Now, if I asked you to tell me the first real number, you would fail. You would fail miserably because you wouldn't be able to do that. But if I asked you, and if I asked you to tell me, let's say I took another set, let's say D, of all the real numbers between 1 and 0, and I asked you to tell me the first real number here, again, you would fail. If I asked you to tell me the fourth real number, you would fail because there are infinitely many real numbers. And that is in fact what uncountable is. Uncountable means I'm not able to pinpoint and give you that information when I ask for it with a particular index. If I tell you I want to know the last element, you will fail. If I ask you to tell me the 45th element in the set, you won't be able to count for up to 45 and tell me, oh, this is the 45th element. So this is actually, both of these are examples of uncountable sets. Now we're going to talk about the formal definition, and we'll come back to these examples and a few more examples which will help you understand. So the definition is as follows. We say that A is finite if A has an equivalent relation with J of n. Now I want to define here what J of n is. J is simply a set containing positive numbers. So by that logic, J of n is essentially a set containing n positive numbers. So that means there is a one-to-one relation and an onto relation between A and J of n. That means if I take n positive numbers, I will be able to map them to the elements of set A. In such a scenario, I can say that A is finite. Now A is said to be infinite if A is not finite. That is simply the definition of an infinite set. And in real analysis, you will notice this a lot. You will think that, oh man, this is stupid, this is funny, but it actually has a specific meaning and it makes a lot of sense, which you will understand as you go deeper and deeper into the course. But simply the definition of infinite is, an infinite set is if that set is not finite. If I'm not able to find any one-to-one relation between J of n and that set A, which basically means what? Which basically means I'm not able to find any positive n where J of n has a 1-1 relation with 1-1 and onto relation, equivalence relation with A. In such a case, if I fail to do that, then it's infinite. Now A is countable if A has a 1-1 onto equivalence relation with J. And J is simply a set containing positive numbers. It doesn't end. Here in J of n, it ends after n positive numbers. But J is just a set of positive numbers. It's going on and on. So in some sense, you can think of J as simply this J. You can simply think of it as the set of natural numbers. Right? That's how you can think of it. So now if there is a 1-1 onto equivalence relation between the set and the set in question A and the set of natural numbers n, then it's said to be countable. Now a set is said to be uncountable if A is neither finite nor countable. So these are the 4 definitions, and we're going to break this down a little bit more, and I've just called this problem solving to give you some deeper examples and to help you understand better with the mapping. So we'll also take a mapping here and define and discuss it. So now let's say I have a set A and the elements of set A are, let's say it's not numbers, okay? Let's just say it's alphabets, A, C, F, G, I. These are the alphabets of set A. Now if I take the set J5, which is nothing but which I am terming as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could be any 5 positive numbers. I'm taking the first 5 positive numbers. So if you see here, I can map 1 to A, 2 to C, 3 to F, 4 to G, and 5 to I. Now this is a 1-1 map. correct? It is an onto map as well. And it is in fact an equivalence relation, which you guys can check for yourself, because you have to check those three properties. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but you guys can check it, and it actually is. Now, the thing to notice here is that I have an equivalence relation between the set A and the set J5. That means A and J5, there's a 1 1 onto map. So now, because I'm able to do this, I can actually say that A is finite. A is finite. Now comes the second question. What about an infinite set? So I'm going to give another example. Let's say the set is B, and it's going to be here I'm going to take just the natural numbers itself, 5, 6, blah 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 blah. Here in this case, I will fail to find any n for which Jn I'll fail to find an n for which J of n will have an equivalence relation with B. That is just impossible. I will fail to find such an n. Therefore, I can say that B is infinite. But if you see, B is nothing but the set A, right? J, right? B and J are actually the same set. So there is in fact an equivalence relation between B and J. Therefore, that is nothing but the reflexive property. So I can say that B is countable. Correct? Why? Because I was able to find an equivalence relation between B and J, or I can say B and J are equivalent. And in this particular case, I took the set B as nothing but the set J. So because of the reflexive property, obviously there has to be a relation between the two of them. So this is just some example to give you the subtle differences. Now, an exercise that I would suggest that you all do, and this is something I did when I learned real analysis, was take the very commonly used sets. And what are those? That's the set of natural numbers, set of real numbers, set of rational numbers, set of integers, set of positive integers, and any other sets that you can think of which are commonly used and are named, and just try checking with what these are. Like, are they finite? Are they infinite? Are they countable? Are they uncountable? What is it and why? Try to do this for yourself, try to understand it, and this will put you at a much better place. Now, the last result I want to discuss in this video is as follows, and I'm not going to be proving this because it takes a bunch of time, but I will just give you the gist of it. Also, an important thing, going forward, if you guys want me to discuss more proofs, make sure you drop a comment so that I know that a significant portion of you are actually interested in that, so that I can make a video on it then. But for now, I won't be dealing too much with proofs, just the intuition and the idea and the thought process behind these theorems. So the theorem states here that every infinite subset of a countable set is countable. So another way to think of this, and the only reason I'm actually talking about this theorem is to mention this other way of thinking of it, is no uncountable. I think I'm not being very legible, so maybe I'll write it a bit more clearly. No uncountable set can be a subset of a countable set. And this is the main takeaway from this theorem. So this theorem states that every infinite subset of a countable set is countable. And if you remember, like I told you, by definition, a countable set is infinite. Correct? So what I'm trying to say is that if I take some of those elements away from that countable set, I will still be able to order them in such a way that I can count them. And this is a very important result actually, because we'll use this to prove and disprove many things in the future and in the next lecture literally. So I would request all of you guys to try to attempt the proof for this. If you're not able to, no problem. I'll give you a few ideas at the start of the next video and how you can approach the proof. I won't give the entire proof. But yeah, the takeaway from this theorem is that there can be no uncountable set which is a subset of a countable set. So if I have a countable set, let's say the countable set is a countable set. If B is a subset of A, then there is no way that B can't be uncountable. That's essentially what this theorem says. If A is a countable set and B is a subset of A, B is an infinite subset of A, then B first of all has to be countable, which essentially means that there is no way that there can be a subset of a countable set that is uncountable. That is the takeaway from this, and it might seem extremely confusing to you because we're throwing around the words countable, uncountable subset of a countable set, and that's why it's important for you to spend some time on this theorem, try to understand what it's trying to tell you, and also prove it, because the moment you prove it, you'll understand in a deeper fashion what it's actually trying to convey to you. If you're not able to do it, no problem. I will be giving a few hints on how to prove it in the beginning of the next video. So just to summarize what we did today, we spoke about what an equivalence relation was. That was just a definition, or equivalent sets. That's what we spoke about. Then we spoke about what finite, infinite, countable and uncountable sets were. I gave you the formal definitions, and I spoke about how J and J of n are sets that we already know. J is nothing but the set of can be thought of as nothing but the set of natural numbers. J of n is nothing but a set containing n positive numbers. Then we went on to take a few examples and show how we can actually say whether a particular set is a finite set, or if it's an infinite set, or if it's a countable set. And I asked you to work on some commonly used named labeled sets to figure out whether they're countable or uncountable. And finally, I gave you this very small result because we'll be using this in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any confusion at all, make sure you drop a comment and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like my video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel. And I'll catch you in the next video with some more fun real analysis. Thank you.